All right, hey everybody, happy Tuesday. My name is Trish, and I think I know most of you, but if I don't officially know everyone in here yet, hi, I'm Trish. I'm the CEO here, and I can't tell you how excited I am for tonight. I've been waiting for tonight for a long time, in a good way. And I'm happy to see smiles on your faces and not too many looks of fear, and that's exactly appropriate because nothing to be afraid of tonight. We are going to talk about music licensing. It's one of the biggest, most complicated topics I have ever tripped and stumbled past, but there it is, and it's part of what we do when we make TV. So I want to start by saying how immeasurably proud I am of every single person in this room. There are people in this room who have been making shows at NECAT and the things it was called in decades past for 30-something years. Let that sink in for a minute. There are people in this room who are not 30 years old, but there are other people in this room who have been making public TV shows for more than 30 years, and I'm proud of them. There are other people in this room who took their first NECAT class this month. So 30 years from now, I might be sitting here with gray hair and no teeth left saying how proud I am of those people. And I want you all to hear that. Staff is proud of you. Your colleagues are proud of you. The board is proud of you. The city is proud of you. So why are we here? We use music in virtually every TV show that we do at NECAT on all three of our channels. And we've been doing that since 1978. I will tell you that we've learned we're not exactly doing it right. And that's okay. We're going to start doing it right. And it is very complicated, but it's not going to be a switch that gets flipped. It's not that your show's going to go away. It's that we're going to learn how to do the right kind of protocols and the right kind of licensing. So not only is your show awesome for us, but you could be picked up by any other PEG channel in the country that you want without anybody having to question, ooh, I don't know, do you have all the right stuff? You know, I had the good fortune of getting to go to the PEG TV conference, national conference for the first time. I didn't spend NECAT money on it, don't worry, I paid it out of my own little Trish pocket. But I wanted to go and meet the staff from other stations like us around the country, and I wanted to hear what they do and how they deal with their funding problems and their stuff. And it's a problem for everybody. We're not the only people struggling with how to do music right. But we are in Music City, and we have some really good friends, fortunately, who do know how to do music right. And they're not mad at us. They're excited that we want to learn how to do it and begin to incorporate it in NECAT programming. So the main message I want you to hear from me tonight is we're not doing away with anything that you do, okay? We're gonna figure out how to do it appropriately and in compliance with the law, and we're gonna kick the heck out of it and do it even bigger and better than we've already done it all these years. So some of the folks that you're gonna meet tonight are board members, and some of the folks are just nice people from the community who have been helping us with this. And I'll do a quick introduction. Right beside me is our dear friend Stephanie Taylor, who you might recognize. She used to be on the board until about a year and a half ago. And she is an entertainment law attorney at Stites and Harbison. This is her specialty. So this lady knows what she's talking about tonight, and she's been gracious enough to try to help me understand it for several months now, and I think I have mostly wrapped my brain around it, not entirely. And then to her right is Councilman Jeff Syracuse. He's an elected official. He's part of Metro Council. He represents the fabulous Donaldson neighborhood. Some of you guys probably live in Donaldson. He also happens to be in his 13th or 14th year as a licensing manager at BMI. So he knows his stuff too, and he cares about NECAT. So he's another good person to have on our team. To his right is one of our newest board members, Joey Leslie. Joey is one of the cleverest people I have met in forever, and you'll see that shortly because he's going to do a fun activity with you guys as first up on the agenda. The message I want you to hear from me is don't freak out. Nothing's over. We're just polishing what we do here. We're higher profile than we've ever been. We have more members than we've ever had in 38 years. Look how many of you there are, and there's another this many who aren't here with us tonight. city cares about us, community cares about us, and we're just going to polish what we do so we can take it even further. And with that, Mr. Joey Leslie, what do you want to do with our friends?
All right. Now we'll kind of dip our toe into some of the business here. So when you guys checked in today, Katie helped you choose a color associated with the kind of music that's in your show. So what we're going to talk about next and what Katie's handing out has to do with some sort of NECAT music scenarios we've come up with. And so this is going to be a way for you to kind of figure out, based on the kind of music in your shows, if the music you're using so far maybe is already like approved, good to go, you don't need any changes, or maybe you can check some of the boxes and you're almost there, but there's going to be a couple things that you need to do to be compliant. So when you get these sheets, you'll be able to look through, kind of see where you fall into that. But so we'll do a quick example here first with Scott. So Scott, I see you have green and blue scenarios. Well, first, let's do a show of hands. So who chose one color? Only one color. Show of hands up high. A few people. Okay. Who chose 2 colors? Who chose 3 colors? Okay. And who chose 4? So a few. Okay. Who wasn't really sure what categories they were in, so they just kind of chose at random. And that's totally okay. Anybody that was kind of on the fence? A few of you? Okay. Totally fine. So what we want to do is we'll walk through a couple scenarios, and this will help you kind of figure out where you belong. And then if you're not able to check all the boxes, then Stephanie and Katie and others can help figure out what it is that NECAT is going to offer that's going to help you guys do that. So Scott, if you'll step up here, join me up here. I think this mic will be good for you. So if you will, sir, tell us a little bit about the show you produce.
It's a hunting show.
Okay.
And, it's about hunting in Davidson County or in the city environment.
Okay. Awesome. And it's called?
Urban hunting.
Very good.
Yes, urban.
All right. So you chose blue and green. So let's talk about the green scenario here. And so here's how the rationale you can use when you go through and figure out if the music you use, think of your theme song or the main song you use in general, and you can go through. So you would just kind of walk through this.
I can't see that. I'll have to get my glasses.
Okay. No, it's fine. So recorded music tracks are played in your episode, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so we want to check some of these boxes here. So the first one, the song was written before 1923 and therefore is considered public domain.
Well,
Nope.
I don't use those, no.
Okay, nope, so can't check that one. All right, or the tracks are the original work of an artist who recorded the track. It gave you specific written permission to use their music.
That's correct. So I know a number of people that are hunters that write hunting songs or songs of, original material.
Okay,
And so because they're friends and they want the advertisement, I put their name or their logo or their website in there, then they'll give me permission to use the song.
sweet, okay, perfect. So we have, check that box, and you can provide documentation for that.
Yes.
Perfect, so boom.
Call them.
Call 'em.
Takes this over.
Exactly. I think Stephanie can confirm, but I'm sure that'll do the
Yeah.
trick, right? So perfect. So Scott, thank you so much. Appreciate that. So maybe that's an easy example, and some of you guys are going, well, wait a second, I can't check all those boxes. And that's totally okay. We think that's going to apply to a lot of us. So is there anybody who feels like you're in a different scenario color and you can check all the boxes? Okay, totally fine. So I'm sure we have some questions about how to check those boxes. So we can segue now into Stephanie's section if you want to cover off for us some of the different rules about what music we can use and can't use, and then any questions that come up along the way that aren't covered, we can kind of take note. You can flag me or Katie, and we're going to have what we call a parking lot over here. So some questions that come up, we'll post them up, and then that way toward the end, if any of those aren't answered, we'll have time to kind of get with Stephanie and answer, or Trish and answer some of those at the end, if that makes sense. Okay? Clear as mud? All right, just roll with me, guys. Perfect. Okay.
So I gotta say, I'm concerned about urban hunting because my brother-in-law tried to do that once, and his bow and arrow shot an arrow through his neighbor's car door. So I'm sure you're much wiser than he is. He's a lieutenant colonel now, though, so I guess he's done all right for himself. All right, so I spent 6 years at MTSU teaching undergraduates copyright and music business. So I'm going to try to take this down to that 101 level because this is brand new for almost everybody in the group. There are no stupid questions. Let me tell you about the music industry and music licensing. I always tell people it is business on its head. Everything you can do that doesn't make sense is what the music industry has done. Okay, but we live in a music town, right? We all know songwriters. We all know people making a living in this industry. So that gives us a really good talking context because you probably live next to somebody or work with somebody who's in the industry or trying to be in the industry. So this is a great opportunity for us to figure out how do we make sure those creators get paid for their work, just like you would want to get paid for your work, and how do we make sure that we respect and honor what those creators make. I spent this morning talking about film and television with my clients because I have a couple clients that have film and television products that are going national. And I would love for some of you in this room to learn how to do it right so that when you call me, I can say to you what I said to my second client. Sounds like you have all your ducks in a row. This thing is ready for international distribution, right? Because you know what you're doing. You're licensing it, you're clearing it, you have great content. How many of you really want to make film and television your career at some point? I mean, that's about a third of the room. All right, so this is great free legal advice. Take notes, all right? So the first thing we need to understand is what are the underlying copyrights that we're incorporating into our shows that come from someone other than ourselves, right? By the way, you guys, when you create your show, you're all creating a copyrighted work. Your show, in and of itself, is a copyrighted work. You can register that with the U.S. Copyright Office, original creative work. But sometimes you're incorporating something from someone else. So I've got a list of definitions. Did these get handed out? These sheets
We have it
at
as
the
a,
end?
we have it as a takeaway
Okay.
for when you go home, a recap of
So I'm going to talk through this, but you'll have a recap of it. So first things first, musical compositions. That's what Jeff and I deal with every day. When a songwriter walks into a room with his or her guitar and writes a song, they're creating a musical composition. And that's the heart of Nashville, right? But the person who writes the song isn't always the same person who goes and records that song. So I'm working through an example to kind of make this more tangible for you. So Dolly Parton wrote "I Will Always Love You" for Porter Wagoner, and it was a hit song for her. She wrote it and she recorded it. But a lot of people in this room are probably more familiar with another recording of that. Who else recorded that song? Whitney Houston. So Dolly cashed in twice, right? So when Dolly writes the song, the musical composition, she owns the copyright in the song. When it gets recorded, that recording, the audio part, is owned by the record label that records that. So in that instance, it's actually not Whitney Houston that owns that recording, it's her record label that owns it. And that's what we call a sound recording copyright. So in every sound recording, there's an underlying musical composition. So two separate and distinct copyrights, which in Nashville makes sense because we know people that write songs, but they're not stars, right? So musical composition, sound recording. Those are the two primary copyrights we're dealing with in music. Also in your show, you might incorporate film clips. Anybody incorporate film clips in their show? Right, those are generally owned by the production company that created those. It may be an individual, but often it's a production company. How about visual art? Anybody have some visual art in their show?
like a painting.
A painting, yeah. Some people might hang hatch show prints on the wall, you know, or if you watch television, sometimes you see the paintings blurred out. That's because that's another copyrighted work that needs to be licensed. How about anybody read literature or use scripts in their shows? So sometimes people read poetry, right? The underlying literary work might be owned by someone else. So it might be owned by the author, but it might be owned by the publishing company that bought the rights to that. So if I sat and read children's books on screen, those books, right, those literary works are owned by somebody else. All right, so those are some of the underlying works that you might have in your show. So when you create film or television, you need permission from all of those copyright owners to incorporate the works in your show. So we're going to kind of focus on music tonight because that's the biggest thing. And why is it important? It's important because we hear this every day in Nashville. Songwriters are making less money. Publishing companies and record labels are making less money. So they're making greater efforts to police the rights that they own, to make sure that they're getting paid and that their works are being properly licensed. Are they going to come after NECAT and all of you tomorrow? I doubt it, but it could happen. And if it does, that's not a great thing for the city to have to deal with, especially Music City, right? So we're going to do this right. The great thing is Congress recognized that there is a value in stations like NECAT, stations like PBS, and they created really fair licensing processes so that you can more easily make your shows and NECAT and PBS can more affordably license the content. So I'm going to talk through how that works. So let's talk through the examples. I mentioned ownership, right? Who did I say owns the songs? So let's back up. So the writer, the author of the song is going to be the owner, and typically songs are owned by music publishing companies. There are a lot of those in Nashville. Sony ATV, Universal. There are a lot of music publishing companies. They own songs. Who owns the sound recordings, the audio?
Label.
Typically a record label. Now, if Stephanie Taylor writes a song and Stephanie Taylor goes in the studio and I record my song on my album and I'm not signed to a record label, then I own all of it, right? But if you want to use Beyonce's song, right, there's going to be somebody else that owns it, right? So the bigger it is, the more high profile it is, the more likely it is that a big company owns it. And so what are you dealing with? A big company. We talked through visual art, film. Basically, the author is the owner unless they've licensed or assigned their rights to a bigger company. So successful things tend to be licensed or assigned to bigger companies. So let me pause there. Any questions so far? Okay.
She's good at answering them, you guys, if you have them down today.
All right, so here's what Congress decided. They like shows like Austin City Limits and Bluegrass Underground. And they want people to go on television and perform live music. They think that's of value to the culture of America. So Congress enacted something called a compulsory license. So the word compulsory means that the owner is compelled to give you the license. They can't say no. So when Bluegrass Underground does their show, and they're a client of mine, so I go through this process with them every year, we compile a list of all the songs that are performed by the artist. And once we compile that list of songs, we figure out who owns the songs. How do we figure out who owns the songs? I go to Jeff's website, bmi.com, and there is a repertoire search area. And I can look up the song, and I can find out who registered rights in the song and who owns it. And I give that cue sheet list to PBS, and PBS pays the rights holders. PBS has a budget to do that. Does NECAT? No. But the great thing is the rates are very, very, very low. So for PBS, it's anywhere from $75 to $100 per song for 3-year license. That's phenomenal. If you guys knew what I had to pay to license songs for mainstream television and mainstream film you'd be blown away. It's crazy, stupid money. So the fact that you can license a song for under $100 is stunning. It's a bargain. So that's a value. Now, if instead of people coming and performing live, I wanted to just go down in a cave and play records, that doesn't sound very fun, but if I just wanted to play recordings, I've now incorporated a second copyright. What copyright is that? Anybody remember what I called it? I'm playing albums in a cave. So now I'm using the sound recording, right? The audio. Who owns that? The label, yeah. And guess what? Congress didn't see as much value in granting reduced licenses for recordings. So recordings are not subject to a compulsory license. Songs are, recordings are not. So guess what I gotta do now? I gotta call the label and say, hey, I have the show. I wanna use your recording. And they're gonna say, well, guess what? It's not subject to a compulsory rate, so let's talk prices. All right, so that's the downside of using recordings. I'm sure some record label people lobbied for that, right? I'm sure that's why it didn't go through Congress. But that's what we're stuck with recordings. Visual art, sculptures, graphic works, those are subject to a compulsory license for NECAT as well, so you can pay really low rates to use visual art. If you can find the authors, that could be a little more difficult with visual art. Film clips are not subject to compulsory rate, so again, I gotta call a production studio. And some production studios are reasonable in their rates, some are not, just like record labels. I mean, it's a negotiated process. So let's pause there.
Can I jump in? So I just want to recap the part that I think I understand from what Steph just said. And I do know how thick and complicated it is because literally this woman has said it to me probably 25 times over the last, several months. But the two things that she's talking about are the performance of a song, versus the hit play on my CD player. So the first one, the one that the owners can't say no to with the compulsory license because they are compelled to grant your request to let you perform the song. That's the good kind, the easier kind.
Easier kind.
The harder, more expensive kind is the, here's my CD, I'm going to put it in and pull that song off and put it in the background of my show.
Yeah, and let me clarify that. So the underlying composition on that recording is still subject to the compulsory license. But when I use an audio recording, that CD, right, both copyrights are being performed, right? The song and the sound recording. The song is subject to the reduced compulsory rate. The sound recording is not. So that's why when you use a CD, it raises it to a different level. Okay? So, questions about that? Clarifications? Yeah.
Our youth group is the one that will be doing the show.
Yeah.
But our church has something already set up for certain kinds of music. Does that cover us?
Yeah.
Even though we're here and not at church?
Well, let's talk about that. So, Jeff, your church probably has a license through ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. That's a right that, let's talk separately about that. That's a public performance right. So talk about what BMI is about.
BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC are the three performing rights organizations here in the United States. And we are recognized under Title 17 of U.S. copyright law to affiliate a songwriter and find out where their music is being performed, collect those fees. We only operate on about 12 cents of the dollar, and everything else goes back to those songwriters, composers, and publishers. So that, in a nutshell, is what we do.
So any public performance of music is going to be licensed by BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC generally. If not, they're out there sending you letters and saying pay your dues. When you come in here, NECAT is also licensed by BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC for the public performance. That's an additional layer of rights that are cleared. Comcast collects those fees from all the Comcast subscribers throughout Nashville and all the cable programs, and they pay a fee to ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC on behalf of NECAT so that is covered.
Which I kind of want to say is why we sort of misunderstood this all these last several years. Staff and board and members sort of inherited the lore, the legend that, we have a blanket license. And we do. We have a blanket license with BMI that takes care of that part of the licensing. It's this other bit that we don't.
So when you synchronize music with a visual image, an additional right is invoked. And the owner of the underlying work can say, no, you can't synchronize my music to a video, except that there's this compulsory license. So this is a separate right. So you have to pay a public performance license fee. That doesn't affect any of us. It's done, it's taken care of, you're fine. There's the synchronization right with regards to the song, the musical composition. Your church does not have that license. That's going to be separate and distinct. And there's the sound recording. If you're just doing a performance, your youth group's coming in and they're singing.
Well, I was just saying there's no musical performance.
Okay.
It's more so for the intro and the going out.
Okay.
What we'll do is pretty much interviewing within the community.
Okay.
So that's what I was trying to figure,
let's
because
clarify.
we wouldn't be using so much words, but just the melody of the music
Okay.
to go in and come out. So I just wasn't quite sure how that would work.
Yeah, where'd that music come from?
It just depends. We haven't picked anything yet. That's
Okay.
why I came here to see
yay.
what we needed to do, whether we could have it or not have it.
Perfect.
Starting
so if I
out.
were in your shoes, do you guys have a choir at your church?
No.
Do you have some good singers at your church or good
We
musicians?
do.
Okay, so what that gives you is some resources, right? So I would think about making my own original recording of a song that either somebody in your church wrote or something that's old, public domain.
Okay.
That's going to be super easy. And you know what? In Nashville, it doesn't take too many phone calls to find somebody who can help you with that process.
So on the paper it says as long as we find something that's before 1923, we can use it without having to worry about any kind of licensure.
Before
Can we
1923, or something somebody you know wrote and they give you permission to use it.
Okay. Now, with that being said, could we just use the music part of that without the words and it won't be a problem?
Doesn't matter if it has words, it's the same right that's
Okay.
triggered. So words or no words, you still need the license.
All right. Sounds
So
good.
good question.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. I can bring Mike. I think you were next.
You just confused me because,
You're welcome.
well, you use the term song.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call a song?
Well, okay, so I'm a classically trained musician. In music school and college, a song means there are lyrics, right? In Nashville, song just means a musical composition with or without lyrics. So it doesn't matter if there are words or not. It's when someone writes a piece of music. Musical work, musical composition, song, for our purposes, all the same thing.
Okay, so a track would be classified as a song.
So it depends what you mean by track. Sorry. So,
Okay, let's just say that I walk up to the microphone, I bought a karaoke track, I play it, and I sing the song.
okay.
So what's what?
Good question. So a track to me is a master or a sound recording. So the audio component, the recorded component, that's not a song. That is a separate work that needs to be separately licensed
But it's not covered under our license so far.
so far.
Then what is covered under our license?
The underlying composition that is recorded. Now the recording is not covered. Think of it this way. Let's back up, okay? When Mozart sits down and writes a piece of music, that's a musical composition. When a symphony goes and records that, that's the sound recording. When Dolly Parton wrote her song, right? When she wrote I Will Always Love You, that's the composition. When she went in the studio and recorded it,
You're
that's
still
the sound
making it
recording.
confusing. What you're saying is if I hold up a piece of paper with scales on it that created a song, I'm covered.
That's subject to the compulsory license, yes.
But if somebody plays it or sings it, they're not covered.
If it's
So all I can do is show music?
no. You can perform it live, but you can't use a track. You can't use a sound recording. When you go in a studio and you push record on something, listen. When
Oh,
you
hold it. Now let's back up.
yeah,
I know you know what you're talking about,
Uh-huh.
but your way of explaining it to me, I mean, I'm
let
totally
me try it
lost.
one more time. Okay. So
Leave off all the little bells and whistles and just give me words.
I'm not. Okay.
I don't care about what somebody wrote 500 years ago.
Mike,
R-
tell her the way your show works and what you do, and then
We have performers come in and they all sing 2 tracks.
Karaoke tracks.
the song.
Yeah.
So one of my clients is a record label. We don't own the songs, but we go into the studio with musicians and make master recordings. Some of those master recordings are for exactly what you're talking about. The record label owns the audio, the oral part, the part you hear. They own that recording.
Other than what you hear, what is there that they don't own? So that's where
They
you're
don't own.
losing me.
They
I know
didn't-
you understand.
They didn't write the music. They didn't write the song. They didn't write the music.
So if I have it just on a piece of paper, I'm good. But if I play it, I'm not good, right?
If you play it live,
How would you play it unlive? Explain it to me.
So
Play it dead?
you
Put-
hit
put it-
play on a CD player.
Okay, that's
versus-
playing it live.
versus
How would you play
No,
it
that's not
other
playing
than
live. That's not playing live. Live is musicians come in here with their instruments or their voices and perform in front of those cameras.
That's okay. But
That's
if you
okay.
use that track that you purchased,
That's right.
it's not covered.
It's not covered.
Okay?
But I think one of the distinctions you need to make is that with respect to a karaoke track, which is there's different ownership for that recording, because technically the studio or the manufacturer, however you want to call it, of the karaoke track, they own that sound recording right.
Yes.
right?
Whoever records that karaoke track, they own it. They
Yes,
own it.
so
They
you
don't
have-
own the underlying composition.
Well, I understand that. They
but
don't own the composition,
Yeah.
but they own the sound recording.
That's right.
So if you're having people perform on TV
Mm-hmm.
to karaoke tracks, which you download and buy, what kind of license do you need to obtain?
You need to obtain what's called a master use license.
And what does that mean?
A master use means the right to use the sound recording master,
From whom?
whomever owns it, which can be determined. If you look on the cover or on the iTunes download, it'll tell you, there will be a circle with a P in it and the name of the record label that owns those
Well,
rights.
no, a karaoke recording is not owned. This is a different layer of question.
No, I did
I
a
understand
karaoke
that the-
litigation, so I don't want to argue.
I'm not
but-
arguing.
No, but,
I'm saying that your distinction is confusing.
well,
Which is how I opened the show, as you may recall.
Well, no.
so
wait.
hold on, just a moment here.
Simple
So
question.
yes, we're working on it. So here's the first things that I said was, and I even said it to Mike, that I think you may have the most complicated situation in the room. And I assured you, as we held pizza a moment ago, that we're going to work through this and take care of this with you. I do think yours is the most complicated situation.
It's not
So-
a complicated question, though.
Apparently it is.
It shouldn't be.
well, it's not. I know what I need to do. If you come to me and you
What
say,
do you
here are the 3 songs that are recorded that people want to sing, and here are the karaoke recordings I want to use.
Yes.
I identify the owners of those recordings. I contact them for permission.
That would
And-
be the owners of those karaoke recordings would
Yes.
typically be the karaoke company.
Yes, typically.
Like karaoke sounds dot whatever.
Right.
They own that recording.
Yeah.
They do not only own the underlying composition.
No, but
I
you have 2
understand
separate.
that.
Yeah. mhm.
I understand that. But my question is, do you contact the people who made the karaoke track to get a license from
Whoever
them?
who owns it, yes.
Does that define their ownership of, say, a cover song done by Lori Morgan?
No, because Lori Morgan's song, right? Or
That's a
whoever.
composition, I understand
Okay.
that. I just am talking about the music that
Okay.
comprises.
Let me give you an example. Okay.
Okay.
I can make a sound alike recording. I can go into the studio and I can sing just like Beyonce and make that recording, and Beyonce has no rights in my recording.
Yeah, I know.
So same thing with the karaoke, right? I can go
No.
make a sound alike karaoke recording,
Of the music, yes.
and whoever creates that recording owns it.
So if I buy that track, it's mine.
It's yours to listen to and to use, but not to broadcast on television. This is an additional use. So when I buy a karaoke track, I can have a party all day long and have a karaoke party at my house with my friends, right? That's okay.
But you can't
What?
televise it.
But yes, but televising it, distributing it to the public, that's an additional layer of rights, and that's not a right that is
Okay.
included when I purchase it for that 99 cents or whatever. Yeah,
Just to clarify what Mike said, right?
yeah.
Now, I believe that he would have to get a license for the song as well as, that's 2 different
Yes.
licenses.
But the song's subject to that compulsory license, so that's easy.
Right, but it'd still be $100 or whatever you're saying.
Yeah, it's actually much less. What was it, Trish? Like under 20 for a lot of them.
But it'd be
was
$20 per song, so it comes up to significant money after a while. But he still needs 2 licenses, one from the karaoke track and one's from the song.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, if we do original music, we own the music, we're set, right?
Totally fine.
Okay, the second question is, if you do original, somebody else does original music, as long as you have permission from the publisher, you're set.
Yeah, you just
Right?
you need permission from all of the owners. Yep.
Are you gonna, somebody can provide some kind of forms, sync forms?
We have a little take home for you on that too, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you don't need a publisher. The writer would have it. But so, if, for example, on some shows, we have famous songwriters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they sing songs that they don't own anymore because they're just the writers on it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else owns the publishing. So we have to go to the publisher to get the sync license from that publisher,
No,
right?
because it's subject to that compulsory license. So all we have to do is turn that cue sheet into the copyright office, pay those small fees, and it's done.
Oh, that's how you do it.
Yep. But if that songwriter has a relationship with that publisher, they can probably call and get permission.
What's the method? We turn a cue sheet in. Are we going to turn cue sheets in when we do shows?
That's what will eventually happen. We'll incorporate a process that's actually quite simple, and it's pretty standard for shows, but that'll be the process.
And it's only $20 to do this? Per song?
There's varying rates, depends how you use it, whether it's featured, whether it's a live performance. There's all kinds of criteria, but there are statutory rates. So the
Okay,
statutes tell us how much we pay.
Last question, is there a minimum amount of time that people, we've always heard like 7 seconds or something like that. Is there a minimum amount of time, or is it just the identification of the song?
Yeah, there's not like a fair use amount.
Right.
Yeah, no. There's
Because
not.
sometimes you hear those commercials on TV, they use a song for less than 5 seconds. They pay less royalties for that or something like that?
You would pay less in that situation, but in our situation, it's not based on timing.
Okay.
The only thing that is based on timing in this situation is live musical performances generally of serious music, meaning classical music. That's based on a minute rate rather than just a flat rate. So, yeah.
I was just curious because I'm listening, but I trying to figure out, would it be easier if he had brought in a band that played all the music rather than using any tracks?
Yeah, house band
Then
would
that
solve
would
the
be,
problem.
the house band would solve a large, and be a lot
Yep.
less expensive than doing all the other work that now we're looking at.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
But that being said, you
I mean,
know,
not that that's an easy
yeah.
fix either. But
Well, it's easier in Nashville than anywhere else, right? But I think the other thing to think about is a lot of those karaoke tracks are probably more licensable than if I had to go to Sony and license a Carrie Underwood song or something. You know, I think that those companies would probably give more reasonable rates. You know, if you put lyrics up, that adds another layer if there's lyrics displayed on the screen, but we're not going to go down that path. But that's another thing to think about. So
I want to chime in too with another solution that we've been working on for, doesn't necessarily unfortunately fit with Mike's situation, but it will for some of you. For Our Lady who's got the program coming down the path with the youth group and the church music. So you're going to go home with a lot of paper, but I just didn't want to load you down with it on the front end. So there are 2 websites listed in some of the take-homes that you're going to have, and these are production music libraries. And what that means is music specifically created to be used in film and television. And the 2 sites that I like the most of the ones that I've been researching and talking to have a dozen different genres of music, everything from electronica to gospel to rap to hip hop to 80s to, I mean, it's all of the genres that we all are looking for. Mm-hmm. It's not the songs that we all know from the radio and the soundtrack of our life, but they are sort of sound-alike songs. They're inspired by all of these artists that we like. And NECAT is happy to purchase access for all of our members to one of these 2 libraries. So if you're here in the house with us tonight, you'll take home a piece of paper that has the website so you can go and play with them and sample and hear all the different things. And then we'll send an email to the folks who aren't here tonight. And within the next few weeks, we'll get you guys to vote on which one you want. Or if you look at them both and you say, Trish, I don't like any of that stuff, I don't want either one, then I'll save our $5,000. Thank you very much. But we'll pick one that the most people feel fits their needs the best.
And can you use that, like, will it have a list of music that you can use?
You'll be able to do anything you want with any of these songs, and there's thousands, tens of thousands of songs on these websites.
and the music library, then you get rights to the composition and the sound recording all at once. Use it however you like. That's the great thing about it.
And you would access it from the website in the comfort of your own home. Pick what you want. You'll have a code that says, I'm part of the NECAT family. Bam, here's your song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything you need, my dear.
For those works, yep.
Yep.
Which tend to be mostly sound-alikes. Like the people that make production libraries, they say, we need music that sounds like the Black Keys. We need music that sounds like, and that's what that's created for.
With his TV show and the music that I put on there, do I have to get that copyrighted through an organization, or is it covered?
So if you go and you make a track for a show and you own it, you can register the copyright.
But do I have to legally do that, or is
No,
it
but
just
it gives you additional layers of protection. So
Okay.
it's a good thing to do. It's not expensive.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Great. So I think we have maybe about 15 more minutes.
Okay.
So Stephanie, was there more you needed to cover in your
I feel like we've gotten a lot of it. Let me give you some solutions. Solution number 1 is use the library. That's super easy. Solution number 2 is use songs written by your friends and family who will grant you permission. And remember, if there are 4 or 5 songwriters, you need permission from all those songwriters. That's the way it needs to be done. So getting permission from one songwriter isn't enough. You need it from all of them. But if you've got friends that will license you their songs, easy, not going to cost you a dime. If they'll give you a free license, and we'll have paperwork that will enable you to get those licenses. If you have friends that have recorded their own albums and they own sound recordings and they're willing to give you rights, that's great. You can get that permission. Again, we'll have a piece of paper that can help you secure those rights and get them to sign off. But you have to get it from the actual owners, right? You have to make sure that you're doing your due diligence, taking care of yourself. That's what people in film and television do, and that's what we're going to teach you guys how to do. So it's an additional layer of burden, but it's very feasible. The other solution, use old songs. Anything before 1923 is presumed to be in the public domain. The problem is a lot of people presume that gospel, bluegrass, folk music is public domain. That's not true. Most of the popular music was written after 1923 and is subject to copyright. So don't assume that because it's gospel that it's public domain. Use recordings that your friends own, use songs that your friends own, use old stuff. Those are easy, simple solutions. And the great thing here is you guys probably know people who make great music and will give you those rights. So, and that library is going to be awesome. As a general rule, don't go on YouTube and download anything and think you can use it. A lot of stuff on YouTube is infringing, shouldn't be there, so don't count on that. Other questions?
I got one more question.
Yeah.
But you know what the fair use doctrine is, right?
I do.
And you know Saturday Night Live, something like that, they come on and use a parody of something else, and that's got a kind of open question as what you can use and what you can't use.
Right.
Now, are we going to have to get a license for something that's a parody?
So the position I take, which is a conservative position, is fair use is a defense, not a right. So I prefer that we not rely on the fair use defense, but license as much as possible. It's messy waters, and it's getting messier every day. So we are seeing decisions by federal courts that are redefining fair use in a complicated way. And so my advice for Trish's sake and for the city of Nashville's sake is don't rely on fair use, but license everything you possibly can.
And if we can't license this, can we use it?
That's going to have to be a decision that the board creates some sort of policy for.
Okay.
So that's a tough decision, but it's, you know, it's
But usually if
important.
it's political in some way,
Yeah,
it usually works.
There's a balancing test for fair use, and we can go through that 4-factor test, and the
Right.
board can decide what's okay and what's not. And that's,
Okay.
yeah, that's tough, but it can be done.
Okay, one more question, and then I think Katie's got a helpful worksheet that's going to help kind of outline the options, and then Trisha's going to walk us through the timeline for some of these changes. Maybe that's out of order, but
Mine's real quick, actually. In regards to literature and music, are there any specific rules for quoting lines out of a piece of literature or quoting lines out of a song?
So those would be subject to a license as well.
Just for a line?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's no 3-second rule. There's no 5-word rule. The general rule is you need a license, unfortunately.
The metaphor that I finally landed on the other day when I was trying to make some of these documents, you could walk out in the parking lot, get in my car, and drive away. Even if you're going on a nice errand to give puppies new homes, you still took a car that didn't belong to you. Even if you were only gone 5 minutes and you came back, you still took a car that didn't belong to you. So that's the best way I've been able to hold it in my head. And you guys, I will tell you, I do understand how giant a question, an issue this all is. And hear me again, nothing's changing immediately. And I'm going to do everything to have your show not go away. That's my promise. Because I want to have all your shows. I want to have more shows. So I just want to do them in such a way that we can put them as far and wide and everybody be unquestioned as possible. So the timeline.
But let me add, so after you went to the NECAT conference, you learned there are some stations that just plain don't allow any music, right?
Thank you. So some people solve it. A lot of stations solve it by you can't have music.
So we're coming up with solutions. I mean, real solutions, viable solutions. So even though it's frustrating right now, it's better than no music.
There's no way I would ever say you can't have music. I mean, well, we're Music City.
Okay, so sorry, real quick, one more last question here. And then
Where are you?
Over here. Sorry, over here.
Okay,
Hannah
George,
Clark.
yes, sir.
Okay, let's back up to copyright. Is a poor man's copyright good or bad?
Well, poor man's copyright is a way of showing your date of creation. It's evidence. That's about all it's good for. And some judges accept it and some don't. So poor man's copyright means you write a song and you mail it to yourself and you don't open the envelope. So.
Okay.
So timeline comments while Katie's handing out her thing that she's going to work through with you guys. You will see on the agenda that was in your seat when you sat down, at the very bottom of your agenda, it says next music meeting, March 29. It is almost 5 months from now, my friends. And between now and March 29, I know a lot of you guys have shows in the can, stuff you have recently shot, you're still editing, somebody's got the studio booked tomorrow that's probably got music involved. I don't want you to freak out about that. So all of that stuff that I'm going to call in progress, planned and in progress, go ahead and turn it in, okay? Now, as you polish those things that are in progress, look through Katie's handout, think about the information that we shared with you tonight, and turn it in before the March 29 meeting. Even if it's not compliant with the new plan, go ahead and turn it in before the March 29 meeting, and it'll go on the air. As of the March 29 meeting, no more non-compliant shows will be accepted. But that gives us 5 months to work it out with each one of you guys through all of these solutions and ideas we haven't come up with yet. So that gives us 5 months to get better at this, right? On June 30, which is the end of the fiscal year and the annual renewal for most NECAT members' membership, that's when no more non-compliant stuff will broadcast. So we'll start the fiscal year fresh with shows that use music the way we're supposed to. Fair enough? Katie Bug, go for it.
Handout that Joey is passing around, this is some homework for you. This is definitely a big, all confusing issue, and it has taken us months to sort of wrap our head around the little bit that we do understand about it, the little bit that I do understand about it. And so what I want you to do with this, you're going to have 1 million questions over the next 5 months, and what I want you to do is sort of focus those questions down. Your homework on this page is to find one song in all of your mini episodes, find one song, and break that song down, break it down in the steps that I have listed here. How did you get that song? What is the song? Who wrote it? And how do you use it in your show? Is it absolutely necessary that this particular song be in your show? And I want you to break it down. And when you get stuck on this form, when you have a gap that you can't answer, or when you realize, well, I'm screwed, I can't use this song ever again, then come to me and come to me with this worksheet. Come to me with your questions, your very specific questions that you have found by using this worksheet, and let's work through them. I think this would be a great way to take this big, overwhelming thing that we are talking about and break it down and make it a little clearer for you and figure out where your actual questions are. The other form we gave you is a writer release form. So this is what Stephanie is talking about. If you have an individual who is on your show performing the song that they wrote, you will get them to fill this out, and this is your permission. This allows you to have them on your show. So it's really simple if you're using original work. So this is what you'll turn in from here on out. So if that is what your show is, and you can easily start going in that direction, every time you turn in an episode from here on out, we want one of these forms. Any questions on, yes, hands go up.
Just the typical scenario in our show is a writer comes in, and I speak for many here, they come in and they've co-written the song, not just by themselves. They, 99% of the time, do not know their address or other factors right then and there, and I wonder how we're going to address that.
So that's great. That's subject to that compulsory license. So those songs should be registered with ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, and we'll be able to.
Original friends.
Yeah. So
These are the friends.
if we don't know who the co-writers are, we should still be able to track down the co-writers and do
That's
their
not what he's saying. He's saying my friend Bob wrote the song, but he doesn't know Bob's address.
Background information on them right then and there, So can they at least list the name? Is that acceptable?
They would need Bob's signature. Do you think they could track that down? Or even an email from Bob saying, yes, use my song.
So, B-Man, what I...
If he wrote the song, but you're performing it, you would get a email from him saying.
He's saying he and I wrote
Right.
the song.
Uh-huh.
He can't find me. Chances are we don't have publishing companies. We just wrote the song. That's all we got. He wrote it with me. He wants to sing it on the show.
So here,
He knows my name.
Here's
this is a transient town. There's no idea where I'm at.
here's my thought.
That's what it is with our show.
I love your show. I love your show. And here's my answer to that, Gary. And Steph, correct me if I'm wrong. Rather than, hey, welcome to NECAT, what are you going to sing today? I think a more useful approach might be, hey, we'll see you on the 17th. By the way, any songs you're planning to perform that day, we're going to need this little sheet filled out for you. So when your buddy looks at it and goes, oh, I probably shouldn't sing that song with Bob because Bob's a hobo and I don't know where Bob is these days. I don't have an address for him. He'll pick a different song maybe to perform. How does that sit?
It's going to be very difficult in a sense because this is known as a co-writing battle. Very few of the songs are just written by the individual artists. A lot of them have 2, maybe 4, sometimes even 5 writers on.
And they're not registered with ASCAP, BMI,
No,
CSAC.
they're not any of that.
You know, I think the other thing you can do is show that you've done your due diligence and keep track, and that's actually something called in the Copyright Office an orphan work, meaning it's orphaned. We don't know where the parent of it, the author of it is. If we can get clear record of that, you know, that might be helpful, which means, hey, this is the last phone number I had for such and such, last email, I've called him, I've tried to track him down, I can't find him. Fine, you know, and we'll deal with that at that point in time. But
So one tidbit of information, just anything, email, phone number, whatever we can
if you can
put down.
exhaust all your resources and show me that person really is missing, if you can go to ASCAP and BMI and CSAC and search for that person and find that you still can't track them down.
But we're not doing it. They're just showing up at the show, ready to play.
Well, that's what we're saying is probably
Yeah.
a better pre-production approach to prepare them for what they're going to do when they arrive at the station. But what if Garth Brooks said, hey, you know what, I want to cut that song. You think they could find that guy then?
Sometimes not.
I mean,
It's a buzzkill. Thanks for sharing.
Most songwriters in this town are affiliated with a PRO, though, and we can find them. Most of them are.
Yes.
So. All right.
I can't believe that's all our questions, really. Ron?
I deal with a lot of independent artists. I'm not sure if they're registered with BMI or ASCAP or what have you, but I'm sure a lot of them are. And sometimes by the time I get the song, like he said, the producers know where to be found, and one of the guys on the song is missing. Would it be in my best interest to see if they're affiliated with one of the companies as far as BMI, ASCAP, and then avoid trying to track somebody down since that should already be registered with them?
Yeah, I mean.
But I have the permission from the main person on the song.
Yeah.
But
So in your market, because you're talking about the producer being kind of a co-writer, like a lot of urban and pop music, the producer is a songwriter, right?
Right.
I prefer that you do everything you can to track them down and get permission. And again, keep a record that you've exhausted all your resources to try to find that person. But permission from one writer is insufficient.
Regardless.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You mentioned the copyright in the video production of a video,
Mhm.
music video. Now, what's the answer to this? If somebody pays to do that, say they pay like an artist pays $2,000 or $3,000 to do that music video, does that original person who made that music video still have the copyright ownership in that video, or does the artist who paid for that own that and can do what they want with that?
So the general rule is that paying for something in the world of copyright does not give you ownership unless there's a written work for hire agreement.
Written word for hire with the
With the producer of the video, yes.
okay.
So the video producer can claim authorship and ownership unless there's a work for hire agreement between the two parties.
Well, I don't know if there's any more video shows on TV. I don't pay attention, but how does this affect them? People who just use videos that are promo videos that are handed out to them. How does that affect them?
Yeah, that's a messy world, right? So promotional videos, you've got potentially 3 major rights. You've got the underlying song, which is probably okay. We can call that compulsory. We've got the video, which is probably owned by the record label, or if it's an independent artist, the independent artist might own the video. And if the producer wasn't a work-for-hire producer on the video, they might have ownership in the video as well. So, and then there's the underlying sound recording as well, which the record label or the artist would own as well. So
those guys are done.
yeah, some of those might be easier to clear though, because they might own all of those rights. And if they can warrant and represent to NECAT that they own all those rights, then we might be able to broadcast those.
Okay.
So you guys, that's sort of the official end of the meeting. But to sort of wrap it up, who's afraid now? Good,
Yay,
good,
awesome.
good. Only John and me. Yeah. No, I am not afraid now. I'm excited by all of this because it only elevates what we do even more. Yes, sir.
It's getting late. I had 2 or 3 questions. One, the 1923 date, does that move year to year, or is it fixed?
Fixed.
And what fixed that?
So there was copyright law that existed prior to 1978, and that's what triggered that as the earliest date of copyright being in the public domain. And then the law was changed in 1976. So everything created after 1976 is subject to the life of the author plus 70 years. And if it's not an author, if it's a company, it's 120 years potentially. So those works aren't falling into the public domain right now.
So we probably shouldn't question anything after 1923, just assume somebody's going to get paid.
It's easier to just assume somebody owns it. Okay. There are ways it could fall in public domain, but that's hard to figure out.
The second question I had was just, is there boilerplate or possible end credits we should be using that would sort of cover us in, as far as copyright, and we've checked this and we've done this? Is there something that we all should be using so everybody sees that we have covered ourselves in some ways? I don't know if I look at everybody's show and what the credits show, how I assume we're all doing a little something different.
Yeah, good question. So generally, if I license somebody's works for a TV or film, we do something called courtesy credits at the end that just says, thanks for letting us use this. Whether we pay for it or not, we give them credit for the rights that they've given us.
Okay.
And you know, when you see that end roll on the film,
oh, yeah.
At the very end is the music. Always at the very end is the music, and it says courtesy credit and who you license those rights from. And the songwriter, the record label, the artist, those are typically all listed.
And then my last question, because you sort of mentioned visual. If we're out and we shoot something and there is a visual piece of artwork on a wall somewhere in the background, and but it's in a public space, how are we covered or not?
Artwork?
Yes.
In a public place is subject to a compulsory license.
Okay.
You know the Frisk Center has those Frisk Center art movements on PBS. I helped with that licensing, and that's subject to compulsory rate. So,
meaning that they have to give it to you, but you still have to pay for it.
A little bit.
Little something.
Just a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Directly to the artist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or the owner.
Okay.
So a lot of public art is owned by the city.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is anybody excited at learning how to do this professionally and kind of the right way by law?
Yeah.
I'm excited by that. Ron, I feel good about that, you know? It's going to take us some months to figure it out, but we're going to figure it out, and look how cool we'll be.
She's excited, not a question. She's excited.
Good. You guys, thank you so very much for having open minds and being here to learn how to do this with us. And everybody get that last sheet that got passed around there? That's the remarks from Stephanie that sort of recaps what she said about different kinds of licenses. So be sure you get one of those before you leave. Mark your calendar for that March 29 next music meeting, and we will be talking to you between now and then. Watch for the email to pick which of the 2 music libraries you like the best.
Yeah, this is the stuff Stephanie went
And
over.
thanks you guys very much.